In the legal world, there is a combination of forces that feed a corrupt and suffocating legal system for attorneys. Law schools, law professionals, judges, and even the firms themselves for whom you work create a system, a matrix, if you will, that is nothing like what you thought when you passed the bar exam. The purpose of this podcast is to help you escape this legal matrix, leading you out of the proverbial desert to be free of the bondage of the matrix. Hosted by Bryce D. Nyer, attorney at law with over 30 years experience in the trenches of civil and criminal litigation at the state, federal, and international levels. He's a highly accomplished and resourceful legal professional, a true master of his craft, and he's here to help you get your life back. Here's your host, Bryce D. Nyer.
All right. This is Bryce D. Nyer coming at you from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg. That's right. We've got another episode of Escape the Legal Matrix, an attorney's exodus from bondage. That's right. So I hope everybody's doing great out there, wherever you may be located, whatever time zone, nation, territory, or planet, or wherever you are in your mind. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about Proxy Wars. Yeah, that's what we're going to talk about. That's tonight's topic. So listen, this is a great topic. There's a lot going out there in the legal matrix out there across the United States, the world, with the law and justice or lack thereof. So let's talk about proxy wars. A lot of times you see what's going on in the world. A bunch of nations get involved with funding other wars and other battles. And that occurs quite a bit. It's occurred quite a bit through human history, where people try and get involved. Well, they don't try, they do. They get involved with other nations, and they fund one side or another, hedging their bets in order to get some sort of payoff. But how does that work in the legal matrix? How does that work in this thing that everybody wants to call the legal profession? Well, this is how it works. So I'm going to explain it to you. So typically, you have two sides. Okay, you've got two opposing sides. That's the way our legal system is set up, to be adversarial, to put the state and federal government to the test when they attempt to put somebody in jail, take away their rights, their freedom, their kids, the government entities. And you, of course, have private lawsuits between private individuals or companies. And it's this adversarial system. But I want to have you think of it in a different way. See, here's what's happening, especially when you're dealing with the state and the federal government. You taxpayers, you're funding a proxy war against yourself. Think about this. This whole thing that's going on across the world today, these Orwellian governments, these Orwellian policies, and even here in the United States, where there's constant accusations, and which I believe to be true, about our own federal law enforcement agencies being weaponized against Americans. I believe that to be true. In fact, I know it's true. There's no doubt in my mind it's true. And who is funding them? Think about this. I'll tell you who's funding them. You are, me, the taxpayers. We are funding the enemy. That's what we're doing. So we're sitting there giving them hundreds of millions of dollars and billions over the years so that the government can grow stronger and basically curtail your rights, my rights, left and right. And it's a proxy war. We're funding it. And we're too stupid to awaken and realize that we're feeding this beast that's growing at this exponential pace that will ultimately take our freedoms and destroy us. And that's what the legal matrix does. See? The legal matrix doesn't want a true adversarial system where truth and justice will prevail, where you put the state and federal government to the test, where you put these Orwellian powers to the test. That's not what the matrix wants. The matrix just wants to consume, and it doesn't care whom it consumes. It just does not. And this is the thing that you law students have got to wake up to right now while you're in law school, or you undergraduates that will be attending law school next year or in the near future. You've got to understand who the enemy is, and sometimes the enemy is us. Sometimes we are our own worst enemy because we are funding these proxy wars against ourselves, and we are basically eradicating the rights that we hold to be that we cherish so much, that we hold, to be so self-evident. But here's what happens. We just go along to get along. And we become so sedated in our way of life of don't bother us. We're going to have our beer, a football game, or we're going to binge watch on Netflix, that your dollars, your tax dollars, continue to fund this horrible machine, the legal matrix. And it's just one proxy war after another. We see this playing out every day and every week in the United States of America. We've seen this with the elections. I mean, in this year alone, all of these lawsuits brought against certain individuals for coming forward to tell the truth about what's going on in our own country, in our state and federal government. People being locked up, people being persecuted, being sued civilly through governmental action. Even our former leaders being charged with crimes and sued for things that if they weren't running for office, they weren't seeking to show the American public what the truth is, to show the world what the truth is, nobody would be bothered with them. And yet we are funding the very beast that will turn on us and come back and take away the coveted freedoms that we just keep taking for granted. Look at your world today versus where it was 10, 20, 30, 40 years ago, even longer. I'm not saying that the world's perfect. I'm not saying the United States is perfect, but we had some great things that were put in place to protect us from this beast called the legal matrix. And you can argue all day long about a couple hundred years ago, we had slavery and the forefathers, blah, blah, blah. That's true. They owned slaves. They did some things they shouldn't have done, but they knew it and they realized it, and they were trying to course correct to forge out a nation, good or bad, but to be the best version of what this nation could be, to be the best version of what freedom could be, to be the best version of what an American citizen could be, and to stand as a beacon of light. Albeit we weren't perfect, we were moving forward toward this better society, toward this better nation, a better way to govern, where we would be able to basically control the actions of state and federal governments and have certain rights that could not be stripped away from us unless there was true due process. But what happened as this country moved forward, and especially within the last 100 years, and in particular the last 20, we have been asleep at the wheel. We have continued to fund proxy war after proxy war after proxy war. This is why you hear this term called lawfare. Lawfare is real. It's not imaginary. This happens every single day and every week and every month, and there's just no end in sight. Now, we've recently had some U.S. Supreme Court decisions which have come down and spanked the federal government and some state governments, and for good reason, because of this overreach. These proxy wars that were being funded were just on the march. And again, using your money, your tax dollars, to build this beast to control who? To control you. We have this 1.3 million active lawyers in this country, but we don't have 1.3 million active leaders. We've got lawyers sitting on the sidelines while this beast, this legal matrix, just marches on and marches on and marches on and just eats at everything in its path and destroys it and leaves a path of destruction the likes have never been seen before. These proxy wars need to stop. If we're going to go to war, we need to war with the legal matrix. We need to take the legal matrix head on and go hunt it down and eliminate it. There should not be any more proxy wars. Your tax dollars should not be funding this beast. This beast, this legal matrix needs to be dismantled. And it does. And it needs to start happening now, but it cannot happen if you law students, if you lawyers, if you live in this delusion and you live in this deception and you don't get off the bench and you don't get off the sidelines and you don't get in the game and you don't get in the war and you don't get in the fight for truth and justice. If you don't do that, these proxy wars are going to destroy you. They're going to destroy all of us. This is why I'm out there with my message. This is why I'm seeking law students. This is why I'm seeking now undergraduate students, even high school students, so you can begin to prep and to train and to get ready to go out there and battle and war with the legal matrix so that you and the legacies that come generations after you live in true freedom. Because right now, all you have is time. That's the only real commodity that you have. Yesterday's gone and tomorrow's here, and the only day you have is right now. And there is no guarantee to any human being on this planet when your last day on this earth is going to be. And how are you going to live it? Are you going to live it in freedom? Or are you going to live it in fear? Are you going to live it in delusion and lies? Or are you going to live it in truth? Are you going to let the legal matrix keep pounding and pounding and pounding and chipping away and carving away and eradicating all these rights because of all these proxy wars, this lawfare that's going on? Is that really what you want? Is that really how you want to live? I mean, you're allowing the legal matrix by your inaction to set up the prison for your children, your grandchildren, and the generations to come. Because you're not being bold, you're not being courageous. You're not willing to war with the legal matrix. And you also have to war with yourself. You have to take that deep look inside. You have to look at all of your domains of body, being, balance, business, and fulfillment. And you have to do a self-audit. Where are you? What are the facts of each one of those domains? Are you able and equipped to go out there and lead and kill these proxy wars and battle with the real enemy, which is the legal matrix? Because I'm telling you, folks, the legal matrix is the enemy. It is the enemy. All you have to do is just look over the last couple of years, especially when we had COVID. Look at all the shutdowns. Look at all the schools that were closed. Look at the kids that were taken from the parents, people put in jail, lost their jobs, people put out of the military. Because of what? Because of a proxy war of a federal and state government monster, a legal matrix that took total control around the world. And there were people that did stand up and they were crucified for it. And now it's all coming out of all the lies and the deception and the delusion, the big money and big pharma and the governments and all their conspiracy inclusion. And it's true. It's not made up. It's not a conspiracy theory because it was proxy wars. We were divided and set against each other, and they took our tax dollars and they funded their machine, they funded their beast, and they fed the legal matrix. And these proxy wars have to be eliminated. They must stop. You see this in real life too, as we talked about a few minutes ago about the proxy wars. Governments going in, upsetting other countries, upsetting their elections, looking for the almighty dollar, the gold, the silver, whatever resources they're looking for, people, human trafficking, all of it. They're going in there because there's a payoff for them while the average citizen suffers. And this is what was happening in the United States. We were dealing with Great Britain. There were some that didn't want to leave the United Kingdom, didn't want to leave England, but there were others like, look, there's a better life. There's a better way. We've got soldiers quartering on our house or taxing us to death. We don't have any due process. They don't care. They're just trampling over us left and right. And people got sick of that crap. And they wanted to forge a better nation. And they wrote some documents, a Declaration of Independence, and eventually the U.S. Constitution. They carved out, yes, again, we were not perfect. We had slavery. We had our sins, but we were moving toward eradicating them. And it took, even after the U.S. Civil War, it took another 100 years. I get it. But at least we had the ability to redress our grievances. We had the ability to fight the state and federal government when they overreached. And now in the world today, it's just not state and federal governments. It's global powers. It's one world order, the new world order. The legal matrix now has just grown into this world monster that seeks to basically take its tentacles and just grab everybody up, to control everybody like a puppet. And it all starts with what we call these proxy wars. Because somebody or some group out there is smart enough to know how to invade your space. And when they invade your space and they figure out the weaknesses and how to exploit them, that's exactly what they do. That's exactly how they operate. And because human beings are so vulnerable, because they can be so weak, because they can give in to sedations and delusion and deception and all of this, this is what happens. This is what happens. And then we become a people divided. We become a country divided. We become a world divided because of the proxy wars. These proxy wars that go on every day, not just in real war and real battlefields, but in our minds and our hearts and our souls, across this country, across this world. The spiritual war that we're in, and it is a spiritual war. Don't you kid yourself 1 minute. Don't even think it. Again, I'm no saint. I'm a sinner. I've committed egregious sins in my life. And that's true. That's a fact. That's not virtue signaling. That's a fact. And I paid a heavy price. It's a horrible thing It's a club you don't want to belong to. But then you wake up one day and you're like, man, I'm in a proxy war against myself, and you are. There's part of you that wants to do the right thing and part of you that wants to do the wrong thing. This saying that's in Scripture about the battle between, the spirit and the flesh, it's real. Think about what you go through every day, this own proxy war within yourself, the temptations that you have every day in all of your domains. I mean, it is a war that is ongoing. And you have to be trained up. You have to be equipped. You have to have the skill sets. Even me, I can't lead others if I can't lead myself. I have to work at it every day. I have to fight the proxy wars within me every day in body, being, balance, business, and fulfillment. There's a process to all these domains, and there's a pain that I have to embrace. And when you're fighting a proxy war, when you're fighting to kill the enemy, there's going to be pain. It's going to be major pain. But it's a process you must be willing to go through, that you must be ruthlessly connected to go through in order to deal with it. Because if you're not, you're going to die in place. And you're going to be a prisoner to the legal matrix the rest of your life. So I want you to ask the better question. Here's the better question. Where in your world are you wrapped up in a proxy war? Where are you funding and fueling a proxy war? Where? Where is it? Where is it? Where inside yourself? You law students, you undergrads, you high school students across the nation, even you active lawyers. We're building an army over 1 million litigators strong to fight the legal matrix. If we don't stand up, if we don't get off the bench, if we don't get in the game, if we don't get in the war, and we don't fight the right enemy, we're going to lose every single freedom we have. And if you think that's a conspiracy theory, then behold your world today and take a really deep look at it. Take a really good look. A true look. Don't shy away. Look at it. Hear it. See what's happening. Because your children, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren, every future generation of your family is going to be counting on you. They're not even born yet. But what you do or fail to do today determines whether they live as a prisoner or whether they live in freedom. This is Bryce Nair coming at you from Fayetteville, North Carolina, home of Fort Bragg, where every day men and women don the uniform and they fight wars, sometimes with themselves and sometimes they're sent by our government to fight proxy wars where we have no business being. We need to start living in truth, me included. This is Bryce out.